Yes, mine are 19 and 21. So
Really fun ages, though.
they are fun.
Yeah, it's a whole new dynamic to your relationship, don't you?
Yes, yeah. It's like, oh, they're good women.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, they're good. It's fine.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty. What do they do?
My daughter goes to school up in Nebraska. She's a senior in college. She runs track there. And then my son goes to school at Penn State in Kansas. He plays football there. So he's a freshman. This is his first year. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it is fun.
Good morning.
I never go anywhere on Sundays, and my roommate is an organist at a church, and he works there. And so he got too much out of me once. You're here.
You made it.
And then my daughter being induced today to have our grandson. And so,
Congratulations. First what?
yeah, I mean, it's been a whole weekend thing, but they're finally
All right, everybody.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good morning. You guys can do better than that. Good morning. There we go. All right. Welcome to the All Souls Forum here at All Souls UU Church. My name is Richard Thompson, and I'm a member of the All Souls UU Forum Committee. But most of you know me as that guy who wears the bow ties. Dedicated members of our forum committee come and go, but the forum remains. It has been operating since 1943 to provide a platform for the discussion of significant issues. And this, if you do your math, is our 80th year. Today, our speakers will present for about 35 minutes. We will then pause to take up a collection and announce next week's topic. This is followed by a Q&A period of about 20 minutes. This program is live streamed on YouTube, where viewers may post their questions in the chat. We monitor those questions and ask them of the speaker on your behalf. This program, for those of you in the audience, please make sure your cell phones are on silent. You will be severely chastised if you have them go off during the. Anyway, I'm pleased to introduce this morning's speakers from the nonprofit Save, Inc. Heather Bradley-Geary, Misha Smith, and Toni Casey. These three are staff and board members of Save Inc., which is a nonprofit involved in fixing Kansas City's housing crisis. A little history. Save started as an 8-bedroom hospice facility for people in the 80s for people that were dying of AIDS. As the complexion of the disease changed and people were living with HIV, they realized they didn't need a place for people to die, but rather more space, like a group home for people to live. Now it has grown to an organization that serves about 1,900 people annually, including people with HIV, but also people with mental health and substance abuse issues, and LGBTQ plus youth. The topic this morning is solving the housing crisis in Kansas City. I think it's safe to say we will look forward to what they have to share. Take it away, Heather.
You.
Good morning. I've never needed a mic in my life, but I know we're broadcasting. So, my name's Heather Bradley-Geary. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the immediate past president of Save Inc. Board. So I'm currently on the board. I think I have one more year, actually. I'm also a social worker. I'm going to give you just a little bit of information about the state of homelessness in our community. And then Toni and Misha are the experts as far as what we're doing at Save. So they're going to give you more specifics about what we're doing at Save. Just a little bit, because I'm also a policy professor. I have to give you a little bit of background. Really, when we talk about housing, 1968 is really the first time we had housing legislation, and that's when they started talking about the Fair Housing Act. And then we really didn't have anything until 1994. And in 1994, under the Clinton administration, they started Continuum of Care, which was basically saying, okay, communities, you need to start working together to end homelessness, and we're going to stream federal funds from housing and urban development into those communities. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what our continuum of care looks like in Kansas City. But that legislation had happened in 1994. And then we didn't see anything again until the Obama administration in 2009. And that was really the most significant housing legislation we've ever had. And that basically said, guess what? To end homelessness, it's actually very simple. We just need to provide people homes, and housing really should be a human right. And so we really started getting away from transitional housing. We still have to have emergency shelter because we don't have enough units, but we really started talking about we need permanent housing for folks that are homeless. And so that was the Hearth Act. Just a little bit of the lay of the land. Every night, there's about 580,000 people that are homeless in our country. This homeless definition is folks that are literally homeless. So these are folks that are sleeping in their cars, in campgrounds, place not meant for human habitation. Folks that, like, lots of times we'll see, especially with our youth, they double up. So they'll like stay with friends. That's not considered homeless. So all those folks that are maybe staying with family one night, they're actually not considered homeless by the federal definition. And then I have it just broken out. About 33,000 folks are veterans, 421,000 are individuals. And then, sorry, it's kind of small. But when we talk about chronic homelessness, there's about 127,000 folks that are considered chronic homeless. That's folks that have had at least 4 episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years. So these are folks that might have, well, they do have a mental illness. It's just really hard to get. They're the hardest to house. And then we have about 30,000 folks that are youth. And then the rest are persons and families. So that's what what the outlook looks like as far as homelessness nationally. Okay, so this is what it looks like in our community. In Kansas, in the state of Kansas, there's 2,397 folks that are homeless every night. And then in Missouri, we have 5,992 people that are homeless every night. Specific to Kansas, when I talked earlier about the continuum of care, so Wichita, Topeka, and then Johnson County each have their own continuum, which means federal funds are coming into those communities. Anything that falls out of that is considered the balance of state. And I want to talk a little bit because I think it's really important to note the inequity that exists in homelessness. So in Johnson County, there's 212 people that sleep on the street every night. 23% of those folks identify as Black, but the Johnson County community only has 2.6% of the population that's Black. So when you look at the inequity of homelessness, and then you'll see 62% are white, but 86.6 of the population is white. So there's also this huge inequity when we talk about homelessness. Okay, specific to where we're at now, as I mentioned, there's about 6,000 people every night that are homeless in Missouri. Each of these areas have their own federal funding. So St. Louis City and County, because they can't get along, each have their own continuum. St. Charles, which is just outside of the county, and then Springfield, Joplin, St. Joe, and then Kansas City. We're one of the only continuums in the nation that crosses state lines. So our whole continuum is Wyandotte County in Jackson County, which causes it's interesting. I believe there's only one other continuum in the country, and that's Nebraska, Iowa, Omaha, and Council Bluffs. And then there's roughly 2,000 people every night that are homeless in the Kansas City area. So this is just Wyandotte and Jackson County. And then you'll see again the inequities. 36% of those folks are Black, and that it's only 28% of the population is Black in this community. So there's a huge, again, inequity of homelessness. Okay, so how do we do? We can end homelessness. I promise you that we can do this. It is a solvable issue. And we do it through permanent housing. We put people in units. We put people in housing units. So in Missouri, we need about 17,000 units. to end homelessness. And in Kansas, we need about 9,000 units. Just a little bit about what it costs. So even, I know all of you believe this, that ending homelessness is the right thing to do, but even if you don't, it is the fiscally responsible thing to do. So it costs us $153 per day. This is Kansas City data, to keep someone homeless. So this is like we took all the data on emergency, going to the ER, what it costs for an ambulance ride. It costs us $153 a day per person to keep them homeless. It costs us $44 a day to house them. So why would we not? It's like we're saving per person $100 a day to provide permanent housing. Okay, and then just real quick, because I want to get to the meat of saving. These are ways that we fund permanent housing, mostly through the low income housing tax credit, which is a federal program. But we can do it in all these different ways too. This is bricks and mortar, right? This is like the actual build the building. And then we can't just put folks in units, right? We've got to support them. We've got to provide all those services. And so these are ways that we do that nationally, but in Kansas City too, is through vouchers. And I'm sure lots of you are familiar with like Section 8. It basically means a resident will pay 30% of their income to live there, and this voucher makes up the difference. So if I make $100 in a month, I pay $30 for my rent. This voucher makes up the difference. And then just real quick, this is what it looks like. We have a rule that you should want to move your kid in there. So if you build permanent housing, I work for a group called Vecino Group. If we build the housing, this is what it should look like. It should look beautiful, and I should want to move my kids in there, right? Because housing is a human right, and people deserve to live in decent housing also. And so this is just some examples. This is in Salt Lake City. Um, and this one here is 80 units, with 23 units set aside for folks that are chronically homeless. The rest is just affordable. This is in New York, for transition age youth. So young people ages 18 to 24. That's just an aerial view of it. That's what it looks like on the inside. Beautiful. And this is the last example I have. This is in Springfield, Missouri. This is for survivors of domestic violence. And this is what that one looks like. So again, supportive housing can be beautiful, and you wouldn't even know it's supportive housing, right? We fight against communities a lot about bringing supportive housing into the community. Lots of times it's sometimes nicer than the market rate housing, and people don't even know that it's supportive housing. So with that, that's more of Talia. I'm going to turn it over to, here's resources, all the data, where all the data comes from that I just quoted. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Misha, right?
Yes.
You're up next. Okay, I think I need to pull up your PowerPoint. Yeah. Sorry, we have different. Oh, okay. I was like, my hearing.
Hi, I'm Misha Smith, they, them, and at SAVE, I am the tenant-based rental assistance program manager. And yes, and we'll get it pulled up. I'm over 7 different programs, all vouchers to get people into housing, and I'm going to talk about that. Okay. So, this talks about how we are working to end homelessness. We serve about 2,000 people, and then these are the grants that I'm over. HOPWA, housing. I forgot opportunities. Housing opportunities for people living with HIV or AIDS. Shelter Plus Care, also called Housing Plus Care. It is another program specific for people living with HIV or AIDS. Supportive Housing Program. We have a youth program, 18 to 24. And then we have these 3 grants through the Department of Mental Health, SCV, SCK, SCE. So, the reason why I'm going to talk about vouchers today is there are many, many times we have individuals show up at our door saying, I heard if I come here, I'm homeless. You're just going to give me a voucher. That is unfortunately not how the process works. And we hate having to tell them that because we know they're desperate. They are absolutely desperate. We've had people break down, we've had people get angry, which is valid. We try to come from a very trauma informed space. And the one thing that they say a lot is, someone told me to come here, it's what you do. So we are working to inform people how the process really works because we want people to get help and not make those extra treks all the way over to us and only to be told, oh, you've got to go do all this other stuff. So I'm going to explain some of the differences and what a person has to do to get a voucher. So, lottery based, that just means that a space opens up, we have the funding to issue another voucher. Notices go out to our community partners and we let them know, like, hey, we have an opening and it can be for a 1 bedroom. So, people who have clients that are homeless, living with HIV or AIDS, they can send in a referral for that person. And then they use a lottery to select the person. That way it's equal for everyone. And so, once eligible and they're selected, then we let the agency or whoever referred them know so that the person can come in and do an intake with another member of our team. And at that time, they provide all of their information to see if they still qualify because we also they have to meet income guidelines. For HOPWA, it is like 50% of area median income. And I have those on another slide if anyone's curious what the income guidelines look like. And so the lottery based is for the shelter plus care. Also, you'll see it referred to as housing plus care as well as HOPWA. For the other, oops, sorry, I'm really good at this, I promise. So for the others, they come through our COC, the Community of Care, which right now is managed through the Greater Kansas City Coalition to End Homelessness. So we have a thing in Kansas City where someone can call 211 and say, I'm homeless and I want to get a voucher. They complete what's called the VI-SPDAT, which is the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool. Like I said, we just call it the VI-SPDAT because I always have to look it up because I never say it. But this talks to you talk to the person and do like a screening interview, and you ask a lot of questions. And I'm actually certified to do these as well because we want people to have this very specific training because you are asking them very, very personal questions because we have to truly assess their risk level. Because the lottery based is anyone who qualifies is submitted and they pull a name. For this, you actually are ranked based on your level of vulnerability and other qualifying factors. We ask about where they slept last and how long they've been there, because as was mentioned about the chronic homelessness, we ask if they have any type of disability because they do, for the rest of all of these grants, they do have to have a disability. HOPWA and Shelter Plus Care is HIV or AIDS. The rest, they have to have a documented disability. We ask them about their exposure to violence. We ask about drug use. We ask about substance use. We ask about other resources they've tried because we also do try to use diversion because there's not always enough space for everyone that calls. So we want to assess what are the resources they have. So the person takes this and it's like, oh, this person meets the guidelines. They are at a high risk level. Their name goes on a by name list. And then when there are openings on the grants, they look through and they go, oh, this person fits, save DMH, the SCV. has an opening right now, we're going to send over the referral. Our intake person gets the referral, also reaches out to the person, does the intake, and if they qualify, then they begin the process with us to get on a voucher and start finding housing. But the first step is they have to get selected and make it through the process. They can't just walk up and we do this. And as I said, HOPWA eligibility for HIV or AIDS, they do have to provide documentation, which if they're living with this, that's pretty easy to get, or they can go get a free test to get updated. Oh, sorry, for HOPWA, it's 80%. I forget, some of the numbers are different. But this is something that, and you also do not have to have income. You can come into our program and not have income. We also operate from a no barrier to housing place, which means they do not have to be sober. They do not have to, what was it? Oh, they do not have to work and they do not have to be in case management because we know that housing is one of the first interventions you need to do before you can address anything else. So and then also on HOPWA, they do not have to meet the definition of HUD homelessness. They can be sleeping on a couch. They could have just been housed and lost it. They just have to meet income guidelines and be living with HIV or AIDS. And then these are some of the incomes. As you can see, um, that's kind of where we're at. But with the DMH, youth, and SHP, they do have to meet the definition of homelessness. They do have to have a disability, and then the income requirements are at 30%. And then SHP also, we give vouchers and we have rent standards called fair market rent, which is our FMR, and it's set by HUD every year. SHP uses the numbers from the year before. So people that get on that voucher are usually not always happy because they're like, oh, the numbers up until today, it was like a one bedroom was 1,002. For SHP, it's 875. So it gets really hard to find them housing. And then, like I said, for the tenant-based rental assistance, it's also based on household composition. So if they have other people in the household, we have to get their information, if they're making income, if they're like an adult, and what's going on with them. And then you also have to find a landlord that's willing to work within what we pay. And with rent prices going up, we're finding that to be harder and harder. I'm uh, was on the Affordable Housing Coalition with Empower Missouri, and I was on one of the work groups specific to the Light Tech program, the low income housing tax credit. And the one thing we were looking at is how many landlords and housing providers were part of that program and are preparing to leave. And the numbers are huge because we know that it's really a landlord market right now. They can charge the higher rents, they can get tenants in. And, Kansas City was in the news that we had the highest rent hike in the country. And we're seeing that with tenants. And then, it's not over. You get the voucher, you're approved, you find a place, it's within FMR. It also has to pass an inspection that is also based on HUD guidelines. And, we just believe that everyone deserves housing and we try to make it easy. Sometimes we're against a lot of barriers, but we work really hard to try to overcome them. And we'll do questions at the end. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Toni Casey. My pronouns are she, her. I am the property manager for Savings Managed Properties. A little bit of background about me is I have been in property management for about 9 years now. The majority of that was spent with for-profit housing. So just your typical landlord. I was fortunate enough with the first property management company that I worked for to rent to save housing voucher holders. And through this process, I fell in love with the clients, the housing specialists that I met, and Save's mission in general. So I applied multiple times over the next few years until they finally hired me. So I'm very proud to say that I work for Saving.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Sure thing.
If you need to adjust it, I can help you.
Okay. As Richard mentioned previously, Saving started as an 8-room hospice home for people living with HIV and AIDS. But over the years, we've expanded and grown into owning and operating 97 units in the Kansas City area, making us Kansas City's largest permanent supportive housing provider. And before I get into managed properties, I kind of want to touch on what Misha and Heather said about what that looks like for the residents as far as paying and making it affordable housing. So similar to the voucher program where Misha mentioned that the clients will pay 30% and then the voucher will cover that remainder. We are subsidized the same way. However, we are just subsidized collectively. So the residents' rent is just 30% of their income. And if they don't have income, they don't have rent. So, um, in the years leading up to the 1990s, we saw a lot of medical advancements for those living with HIV and AIDS, and we saw that they were living longer and fuller lives. This allowed for us to save, or this allowed for SAVE to expand and offer housing to clients who have mental health as well as substance use disorders. But in honor of our history, we do have HIV and AIDS remaining to be our preferred diagnosis. So, what that means is if a client were to apply and have HIV or AIDS, they get bumped to the top of our waiting list. Um, Unlike your traditional housing or even supportive housing, we operate under the Housing First model. I've included a diagram that kind of explains the differences between housing readiness, which you see in a lot of supportive housing programs, versus Housing First. But in short, we believe that in order to attain long term success, you have to start with permanent housing. There's a common misconception that people who are experiencing homelessness, it's a direct result of like substance use or something similar. But the reality is we often see that people are using these substances in order to cope with the reality of the life that they're living. Um, it's difficult to live on the streets. It's difficult to keep track of your medication. So you can't expect them to be med compliant. It's difficult to keep track of personal identifying paperwork. So it'd be near impossible to get a job. And the fact is they don't have a safe place to return to and lock their door. So that alone, without that stability to make those improvements, is an unfair expectation. And that's why we operate with the housing first. um, in our managed properties, I'm sorry, guys. Let me put this. Okay. Mhm. What Housing First looks like for SAVE is we work closely with agencies in the area that our clients are receiving services through, such as Casey Care, Rediscover, University Health, SWOP Behavioral Health, and other similar agencies. In addition to working with their resources, we also provide an in-house case manager. And what she does is she works with our clients for transportation, meal prep, obtaining any food or furniture that they may need, and sometimes just an ear for people if someone needs to talk about what they're going through. Within our managed properties, we also have different programs, and I'm going to be talking about two of them. One of our programs is the STARE program. This is a university health program. STARE has been around for about 10 years, and this primarily serves those with mental health diagnoses that have resulted in barriers making it hard for them to live independently. We typically see referrals from group homes or other local RESCA programs. RESCA, for those of you that don't know, is residential care. And although we're not staffed 24/7, we do have staff in this particular program into the evenings and on weekends so that we can provide that additional support that these clients might need. Our staff works in unison with the university health staff to provide support to assist in kind of uh, different day-to-day living skills such as cleaning, food prep. If they were to be applying for a job, maybe we'd help practice with their resume, and then also to maintain their med compliance. This is typically a 12-month program. However, we understand that progress looks different for everyone, and as long as our clients are participating in the program and displaying efforts to obtain the goal of living independently, we will work with them and they will remain. Similar to STAIR, we have another transitional living program called Stepping Stones. Stepping Stones is relatively new, and the difference between Stepping Stones and STAIR is that Stepping Stones does not have a time limit. These residents tend to have more extreme issues, resulting in being chronically unhoused. We often see that these residents have a background of severe trauma, and as a result of these traumas, they may have untreated mental health, a criminal history, or active substance use. We work hard to meet these clients where they're at, and that may look like completely relearning how to function. Um, we can do things like helping them keep track of when to shower, when to brush their teeth, when to clean, how to organize, or how to process food. Things that you and I might take for granted as it comes second nature. So we really, really make an effort to meet them where they're at and work at their pace. This is client led. So we have to work initially to break any barriers that there might be. A lot of these clients are not willing to even let us help. And that's a result of them being in constant survival mode for so long. Once you're accustomed to that, it's very difficult. And so you have to be very patient. Um, these tenants do not qualify for typical housing programs or even supportive housing such as group homes because of their significant inability to function outside of that survival mode. Um, I personally believe that this is one of Kansas City's most important transitional living programs and supportive housing, as we are truly housing the clients that society deems unhousable. This is my team. I included a photo because I thought that you guys would want to see who I work with every day. I've included a photo. So these are our maintenance techs, our janitorial, our team operations lead, our case manager, and myself. I am incredibly proud of the team that I work with. I love that I get to spend my days with them. I know that each of these individuals are dedicated to not only our properties, but our residents as well. Um, we really work hard to create a community by hosting events with our residents and encourage client engagement. Some of the things that we do are we do potlucks, we play bingo every once in a while, we celebrate holidays. So every Christmas we'll get together, have a meal, Thanksgiving we have a meal. Um, Halloween's coming up, so we're about to do a costume contest and a soup contest, which I'm really excited about. And then like for birthdays, every month we'll get a birthday cake and we get cards for whomever has a birthday that month. We all sign it and give it to them because the unfortunate reality is our clients do not have the friends and family support that you would want for them. Sometimes that might be the only meal they have or the only birthday card they receive that year. So it's really important to us that they not only have housing, but that they have a quality life. And throughout my 2 years with Save, I remain just as confident as the company's mission in general and my passions, and I am proud to be a representative. I'm going to have Heather talk about two other properties.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention two other programs that we have at Save. So this picture right here is Pride Haven. We opened this in January of 20, so right before COVID hit. Pride Haven is 20 units for transition age youth 18 to 24 that identify as LGBTQA. We know that folks that are 18 to 24 that identify as LGBTQA, if they're on the street for 48 hours, they're going to be victimized. And so we have to get these young people into housing. And so this is 20 units or 20 beds. So it's emergency shelter. Across the parking lot is All Haven, which is on that bottom. And All Haven is 50 units of permanent housing. So this is like what we've been talking about, multifamily housing. 12 of those units are specific for transition age youth. So our goal is that young people are leaving Pride Haven and literally walking across the parking lot to get into permanent housing. So these are our two newest programs that we just wanted to point out to everybody. And then I think we're ready for questions, right? Okay.
Hello, hello. That was impressive. Thank you all. Um, just a reminder, each week's program is rebroadcast on KKFI at noon on Thursdays. Our thanks to KKFI for their support of the forum. We are now going to pause briefly and take up the collection, and I've just been informed that all cash donations to the collection today will go to Benefit Saving. Thank the generosity of Mr. Westerfeld and Mr. Baggett over there. Um, anyway, if you want to make out a check to us, you can make it out to save, comma, INC, period. And we will do that. I also want to let you all know that you can sign up to support the forum on a monthly basis. If you'd like to do that, please contact Alex Westerfeld. Next week's topic is Supreme Court decisions 2023 and beyond with Alan Ralston.
Program managers, who got that? I mean, everybody. I lost it. Seriously? Yeah. I'm gonna work on policy. That's my passion. But keeps telling me I switch first.
Are we ready, Alex? All right. So now we turn to the Q&A portion of the service. Please remember the rules for questions. Come to the mic to ask your question. Speak clearly into the microphone. Remember that this is recorded, even if we can hear your voice in here. If you're not speaking directly into the microphone, KKFI will not be able to rebroadcast whatever you said. One question per person until everyone has had an opportunity to ask a question. And please, no speeches. I'm sure you have things that are very interesting to say, but we'd really rather hear from our presenters from Save Inc. All right. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My name's Carol Coles. I'm a member here. I take part in feeding folks weekly, and we, from this site, feed about 600 people a week with various organizations. Many of them express a wish for finding housing, and many of us who work with them really could benefit from this information. Do you have something that's like a little hand card, a little call 211 for to get started? Because that would be hugely helpful to us.
Hi. The Greater Kansas City Coalition to End Homelessness on their website has a flyer, but nothing that's like a card for them that I'm aware of. But that is something I can reach out to the Greater Kansas City Coalition, since they're the one that kind of take whenever the calls come through to see if they have that, and I can pass it on to Richard to share. And I know your guys' hunger team because I go out sometimes and do outreach with them, and you guys do great work. So
Thank you. That would be huge. So I'll keep in
absolutely.
touch with Richard. Thank you.
I've read that the biggest obstacle to providing housing are the numerous municipalities with city laws, rules, regulations, much less comments from neighbors, neighborhoods to the community. Is that true in Kansas City?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So I am a supportive housing developer, and um, yes, there is some truth to that. When you have to rezone a plot of land, I think probably as a lot of you know, you have to do a public hearing, and then the neighborhood can vote against it. So there is that issue. So one of the things that we always try to do is find that the land is zoned correctly, and then you don't open yourself up to public comment. But yes, that is a very large part of my job is doing neighborhood outreach and just educating the community. And a lot of times it just comes from a place of fear and not understanding the issue. Uh, but unfortunately, sometimes we can't move forward with projects because of neighborhoods. Yeah.
Hi. This is somewhat similar to the last question, but I mean, maybe it's a little bit different angle. With expanding Save Inc., how do you deal with the not in my backyard people that I think they were just talking about? Like specifically, I think they're thinking, are there any strategies you work to educate them or anything?
Hi. So this is a really good question because it reminds me of a meeting that was called with program manager staff and KCPD. Some concerns had come in from people in the neighborhood around us. And, through that conversation, what we realize is just how important, as Heather said, that outreach to the neighbors and the discussion. And then also before SAVE and even now, I've done a lot of outreach in the community with people who are homeless. And whenever the city would propose, we want to do this project, it was the neighbors. And a lot of times it really is just giving them a place to voice those concerns and the fears, which a lot of them are rooted in stereotypes and misconception, and give them the honest answers. And um, be very forthcoming and, really humanize the people that are going to utilize this housing, instead of making them kind of like this scary idea, put the human face to it. But yeah, with that meeting, it just really stressed the importance that we even have because we have Pride Haven with youth. We have All Haven. And so we do have our clients there. And there are, complaints come in and they're immediately gonna go, oh, it's the people in the getting the housing help. That's their first thing. And it may not be. It could be someone from somewhere else. But it is really just keeping those lines of communication open and really advocating for the people that we're helping, because people need to see them as humans. So, thank you.
Yes. Real fast, I'm sorry, I kind of want to elaborate on that as well. I think there's also a lot of misinformation about supportive housing and affordable housing. I think a lot of people oppose that because they blindly just think that you're taking a transplant off the streets and putting them in a unit. So I think it's really important that we all really explain what that looks like because we're not just taking someone and putting them in a house and saying have fun. I mean, we're providing them these resources and we're in constant contact between case managers and other agencies. So I think just that lack of information, I feel like if more people knew that, there'd be a lot more assurance about the neighbors that they're gaining. So I just wanted to mention that.
My question's sort of two-part. You gave statistics about Johnson County and Kansas and Missouri and the interesting Wyandotte Jackson. So I'm curious to know about how you deal with where people reside, because you probably get questions from people who aren't in Jackson or Wyandotte. Clay County was one I'm thinking about right now, and how all that goes together if there's a parallel agency or something like that.
Yeah, I can talk. Yes, I can definitely answer that. So yeah, like Clay County and then South, right, falls in the balance of state. So yes, we are working together. The hard part is I mean, as y'all know, there's just not enough units, but there's a real lack of units in Wyandotte County. And so, we as a continuum, when you receive federal funds for those two counties, we're saying house anywhere in those two counties or housing choice, right? Folks might want to not want to live in one of those counties either. But just the lack of housing. But yes, there is. So for the balance of state, that falls under the governor's committee to end homelessness. They're the agency for that area.
And that's Clay County too.
Correct.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. In regards to the property management and fair market value and Kansas City rent being one of the highest, in regards to what they now have is on-demand pricing and they're using it now in Kansas City, a studio apartment can be to $1,200 today. Tomorrow you can go look at it and it's $1,400 or $1,600. So every day the price is changing on units in Kansas City alone. How do you market that with the fair market value against the vouchers? Because you can go look at an apartment today and the price changes tomorrow because they're using those algorithms. How does that play into how you find housing?
Um, so I know that I talk to a lot of landlords, but the process is when we work with them, and if it's a new landlord that's not familiar with the program, I'll say, we let them know up front what we pay, but then they sign a contract with us for that year lease, and they have to honor that price. And we also let them know that whenever it comes time for lease renewal and they want to increase the rent, it has to fall into whatever the new fair market rent is. I'm finding more seeing like the housing specialist who go out and do the inspections and meet with the landlords and do all that. I've had a few times just in the past 2 weeks where someone's like, I have to get this done now. Someone else is looking and they're not on a voucher and they're going to give it away even though they promised it to us. So we're starting to see the competition in there. And I've had landlords going, why would I work with you guys when I can move someone else in and get $200-300 more?
Right.
And
So you're seeing that same
Mhm.
competition with that algorithm where they're using
Yeah,
that
I
on the new
haven't seen
builds. Interesting.
specifically the like dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing more that it's becoming we have to act very quickly to get a tenant into a unit that really works for them. And also I've negotiated with landlords of like, here's the thing. This tenant has zero income. We're paying all the rent. You're going to get it every month. They're going to have people following up. This is guaranteed for a year. And sometimes that wins them over versus an unknown. But yeah, it's becoming more competitive, and we're also seeing landlords wanting to issue violation and 10-day notices to vacate for very minor issues because they know they can move someone in and get more rent. Yes.
Thank you for all the information. Question, what happens to cases where people don't have the ability or want to maintain a home properly? What hap-
As far as eviction,
what happens to these people?
Just for clarification, is that within our program, like if we have a client or just in general? Are you asking if my client didn't want to maintain their unit or participate in the
Lacks
program?
the ability, places trashed and so forth. How do you handle these cases?
So unlike typical landlords, what I do is we have what's called a housing stability meeting. And so I bring in our case manager and myself, and instead of penalizing someone for something they might not know, which maintaining a house is something that you have to learn how to do. We have a housing stability meeting, and we may bring in their case manager from another program and explain what that looks like and what our expectations are. We have residents' rights and responsibilities, and so we have the responsibility to provide safe and secure and sanitary housing. They also have to withhold that. So we give them structure, we give them an opportunity and resources to do so. Um, Now, if someone just is not in a spot in their journey where they're ready for housing or they're willing to participate, um, we will ask someone to leave our program. But we do it with a 30-day notice in writing between us and the resident as opposed to taking legal action so that it doesn't hinder them in the future when they are prepared. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Hello, I have a friend in Columbus, Ohio, who operates the similar situation that you'll have. And one of the things they've been working on are public-private relationships. So they got a large grant from the feds, and then the state chipped in, and then they got a private developer who helped develop a similar place to Owl Haven. Do you all have public-private partnerships?
Yes, so that's my role. I
Great.
am actually a developer. I'm a social worker first. So All Haven was built with low income housing tax credits. So exactly what you're talking about. We applied for federal credits, and then we work with investors to invest in those credits through a public-private partnership. And then Save Inc. also has another community. We should break ground in about 2 months at 39th and Jackson, and that'll be 45 units for persons with severe and persistent mental illness. So, and that's another public-private partnership. So, yes, we do at Save Inc. Yeah. So, Save, the great thing about all these communities, Save actually acts as the majority developer. And so they get a portion of the developer fee, which is unrestricted cash that can pay for services. It works really well. Yeah. Yes.
So then my other question would be, do you have rules? Some of these facilities have rules, three strikes and you're out, or there are other rules that say this is absolutely forbidden, cross that line and you're out. Do you have
Not
similar?
really. We definitely don't have 3 strikes. We are kinda to, Tony's point, we're working really closely 'ca so we have a 95% retention rate, which means only 5% of the folks that we live in permanent housing don't, you know, don't make it go to another housing program. But we're working so closely with those folks to make sure that they're staying in housing. And honestly, as some of you might know, like once you get an eviction on your record, it's so hard to be rehoused. And so anything we can do to keep an eviction off somebody's record is what we're gonna do as Vecino, and I know as Save Inc. too, is to just not have an eviction. Sometimes it will be like, hey, it's not working. Let us help you find other housing in eviction, in lieu of keys. Like just give us your keys. We'll find another place to live for you. It's not working out, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
In addition to these, do you have other rental units in the community that you utilize?
Yeah, that's the word we should, like how many vouchers we do for.
Yeah, I mean, we have landlords and properties that we just work with a lot. And it's just well known. They know the process very well. We know the process. So yeah, we have people that they'll email us and like, hey, I have some openings at this place. One of the things we're dealing with a lot right now, I know the end of August, myself and some of our team, a lot of properties keep having property management changes, and we have to reprocess all the paperwork over for every single person that
Mm,
lives there to make sure everything's up to date and just making sure, everyone's keeping track of everything. Because when you have those changes, it can suddenly be, wait a minute, where's the rent? We're like, we paid it, we did this, and just keeping up. But yeah, we have properties all over, well, property managers that have single units, multiple, or large multifamily, and we work with them a lot. Yeah.
the other question I have is, I was involved in a longitudinal homeless study in Oakland, California, where we tracked people for 18 months, see how they get off the streets, what was helpful, that sort of thing. But one of the things we uncovered in that study was the high percentage of people who were homeless who had experienced out-of-home placement as youth, right? So there's that whole issue of aging out of the foster care system in addition to that piece. So I know some communities have tried to establish relationships with their DFS that they can capture those youth who are coming out and likely to be homeless. I'm curious if you have something like that.
Oh, we
We manage a program for Rediscover, and it's exactly that. It's youth 18 to 24 who have aged out of foster care and have severe and persistent mental illness. And so, what this does is we catch them at a very impressionable time,
Mhm.
right before they are left on their own devices for independence. So, this program is another transitional living program, and we give them those resources on what a typical apartment rental will look like, help them get jobs, kind of gain that stability, save up some money. And then they even have a program that they can then graduate to after they turn 24. I don't manage that, so I don't know exactly what that looks like. But um, really, there's another 6 year stretch where if we can kind of catch them at that time and set them up for success, you see a lot of them move on to independent living. So I agree. I think that's a very important age to catch someone. So
So what you're talking about, though, is they also have to be diagnosed with a mental illness.
they do. For our funding, you
And
have to have a
do you have
disability of
anything
some
for the
sort.
kids who aren't, or the youth who aren't? Because
Um,
that's such a, there's just
it's different.
nothing for
Yeah,
that
I
group of
don't
people.
personally.
So in the community, we have, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's with the Greater Kansas City Coalition to End Homelessness, the court system and children's division, and the Kansas City, Missouri Public Housing Authority. So they have a program. It's called, this is such an unfortunate acronym. I'm so sorry. It's called FUP, Family Unification Program, and those are vouchers for youth. And so once a child is identified through Children's Division, then we're bringing them in and getting a voucher for them. And yeah, so we do have that program here in Kansas City. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say real quick, within our youth program, one thing that's great is they're in our program. It's like around 2 years, but at the end of those 2 years, we don't go, oh, call 211. We can actually do a transfer to one of the other housing programs they may qualify for, so that they can move straight into like DMH or one of the other programs. And they have a case manager, housing specialist who's working on them, developing all that, getting all the paperwork, understanding, moving on. So it's really helpful. But I did want to mention that piece where we can do a transfer, submit all the paperwork, and get them moved straight onto another program without a gap, hopefully.
You mentioned issues with the trans children or young people. Could you expand a little bit on that and explain some of the vulnerabilities of LGBTQ?
Yeah, I can talk about Pride Haven. So the reason we opened Pride Haven is because there really isn't it's an unmet need in our community to serve transition age youth. So when we talk about transition age youth, that's 18 to 24. For those youth that identify as LGBTQA, especially for our trans community, are the highest victimized community in especially in shelters. So eh, we have to we have to have the resource. Like and so we're full every night at Pride Haven, but we are really proud that we've gotten. I think our housing rate was at 85% of the youth that have come through there. We have permanently housed, but it's life saving, honestly. Yeah, and I don't know. Did you have something else? No. No. Okay, I'm sorry. Good. Okay.
All right. A big thank you to Heather, Misha, and Toni. Wonderful present. Wonderful presentation. I did want to announce that because of you all's generosity, we were able to raise $91 for Save Inc. here today. Thank you. So if you weren't able to ask a question, my understanding is that at least some of these people will be staying late, will be in the library after the forum. Um, Also, there's flyers on your chairs. Please feel free to keep them, or yeah, please do keep them. And also, you're invited to stay for the service, which begins in Bragg at 10:45. Go Chiefs!
I gotta go get ready to go to the hospital. Seeing you guys.
Thank you so much. Yes, I hope everything goes well.
Me too.
About what?
Really? Okay, well then, sounds good. Infinitely better coordinated.
What's that? I'm sorry.
It sounds as though you guys are infinitely better coordinated.